I was totally appalled at the treatment that I received from the USDA, the EPA, and the FDA at the national levels and at the state levels. Everyone tried to make this go under the floor. Their comments from the seed corn company is that we will ignore Jerry Roseman and eventually he will starve and go away and the problem will no longer exist.
Not only at Monsanto, but all over the world, genetic researchers are studying the pig. Munich professor Eckhard Wolf has observed during the last 10 to 15 years a significant decline in the fertility of pigs and cows during exactly the same period in which they have been given more and more genetically modified feed. Does genetically engineered corn play a role here, for example in the Roseman case?
It depends, of course, on how this corn was genetically modified. But if we're talking here about Bt corn, it carries a gene that is effective against a certain parasite, and I couldn't really imagine a direct connection with infertility.
Wolf's studies are co-financed by the industry. The German company BASF is hoping to obtain a lucrative patent, just like Monsanto. The genetic scientists can't imagine that unknown protein compounds in the genetically modified feed products could be responsible for the decline in births.
It certainly can't be completely ruled out, but I think that when these new varieties are monitored, protein patterns would naturally be recorded.
But that is exactly what doesn't always happen. We need only think of the ex-Monsanto employee Azevedo, who reports that products with utterly unknown protein compounds were allowed to enter the food chain.
Monsanto introduced the first genetically modified hormone for animals, bovine growth hormone. And what we know now is that the research appeared to be rigged to avoid finding problems. When they wanted to show that the hormone did not interfere with fertility in cows, they allegedly added cows to the study that were pregnant prior to injection. Other researchers pasteurized the milk 120 times longer than normal to try and destroy the hormone.
The introduction of a hormone to boost milk production in cows shows the kind of massive pressure exerted to launch new products on the market. In Washington, Jeffrey Smith meets with a former inspector at the FDA, Richard Burroughs. The man is a true patriot with children serving in the U.S. Army. Nevertheless, he refused to license the genetic product because the examiners found the test strips from Monsanto insufficient and demanded new ones.
I mean, they could have come in and argued the science of it at a higher level and gotten it taken care of, but for some reason, since I guess I was the obstacle that had asked them to do these extra studies, which were not completed to my satisfaction, it was easier to get rid of me than it was to do the studies, and a whole lot cheaper. So somewhere in the chain of command, they made this point, and that person listened to the money and the politics and agreed that the best way was to get rid of me and keep the products. That was how they finally got me out of the end stages of the review process. They finally said, well, you're no longer competent to do your job, you're fired.
Já voltamos com Patente até onde?
Obstacles are placed in the path of the press as well. Popular reporter Jane Acri researched for Fox News the side effects of the bovine growth hormone, such as udder infections and pus residues in the milk.
We found that there is a difference in the milk. Monsanto says there isn't, but there is. Their own studies show that the milk has a higher spin-off hormone called IGF-1, which is a very potent growth hormone. It's found in mother's milk. It helps babies grow. It also helps cancer cells grow. It helps all cells grow. On the Friday before the Monday air date, it was going to air on the 6 o'clock news. It was a 5-part series called The Mystery in Your Milk. Monsanto sent the first of 2 very strongly worded letters that said, stop the reports, your reporters are idiots, their sources are incompetent. And a week later they sent a second letter from a New York lawyer that said that there would be dire consequences for Fox News if the story airs.
The reporter is called off the story. Her superiors decide that the report first has to be revised by the Fox News lawyers and Monsanto.
The lawyers would say, you know, say what Monsanto says, it doesn't matter what you found, put in this, don't use the word cancer. What ended up being a re-review process went into 8 months and 83 different versions of this story. which is unheard of. Nobody does that. The end result of this 8 months of re-editing the piece was that they fired us at the first window in our contract.
The hormone is still on the market in the United States, and pigs all over the world are today fed primarily feed made from genetically modified plants. Trucks with genetically engineered soy meal are on the roads around the clock, like here in the port of Fredericia in Denmark. Per Digge imports the animal feed from Argentina. He has now been sued for patent violations by Monsanto. In Argentina, the biotech giant introduced its genetically modified plant on a grand scale, according to its familiar pattern. But it was unable to obtain a patent or demand licensing fees there. Since the company does have a patent in Europe, however, it wants to collect the fees here after the fact. The Danish importers are appalled and refuse to pay. They see themselves as a pawn in an economic power struggle. Argentinian patent law does not allow for the patenting of genetically engineered organisms, and the country has so far managed to stand up to the political pressure coming from North America.
We buy the products that are cheapest. There is no advantage for us at all when the feed has been genetically modified. On the contrary, we would much rather offer products that are not genetically engineered. But such products hardly exist anymore anywhere in the world. In the USA, 95% of feed is already genetically modified. In Brazil, 70%, and in Argentina, almost 100%. Providing a guarantee that soy meal has not been genetically engineered is simply too expensive due to the enormous efforts involved to procure it. Whoever tries to do so today can no longer compete. Countries in which this is obligatory, such as Sweden and Norway, have long since had to give up large-scale pig breeding.
The Danish importer knows that the penetration of whole regions with genetically modified feed is irreversible. Proving that pig feed is biologically pure is virtually impossible to finance. And the fear remains that, to top it all off, they could lose the lawsuit against Monsanto. On the way to the slaughterhouse, pumped full of genetically modified feed. The meat doesn't even have to be labeled as such when it comes onto the market. The long-term consequences for the consumer remain to be seen. But Monsanto's intention is clear, a patent on pig genes. And what's next after that? Will any risk be avoided in the future?
Monsanto and some of these companies have something very different in mind. They don't want to change their technology to fit life. They want to alter life so it fits their technology and their profit.
Yeah, maybe you can genetically engineer the pig to be better if they use the genetically engineered products, and you just have an inline monopoly on this. Yeah, sure, that can happen.
These pigs should not be forced to eat genetically modified feed, nor should their offspring later be genetically engineered.
Let's take a look at Louisa here, one of our oldest animals. Here she is with a whole brood of piglets. Let's see if this gene can be found in this Swabian heritage pig from an old line.
Christoph Zimmer dares to test his own pigs. He has hesitated for a long time to test them for the gene marker for which Monsanto is claiming a patent. Monsanto is not alone. And laboratories around the world, the race is on for patented pig DNA. Thanks to the help from the Chinese, the Danish have already made a great deal of progress, as have the Germans. If a company succeeds at exercising near total control over pig breeding, thanks to a wide-ranging patent, it could legally begin to genetically engineer the animals as well, something that Monsanto has already done with plants. A nightmare for nature conservationists, a lucrative vision for industry.
It's easy to imagine that, similar to plant biotechnology, foreign genes could be spliced into animal DNA for livestock production.
A way to simply correct small flaws of nature in order to boost production. And the result? The super pig.